This week, if you have been following the news, has been a pretty incredible week, not only with the hurricane hitting here, but there's been a lot of upheaval around the world. Those who follow the news, you know what's going on over in Israel. You know, the Israel and Hezbollah have been ramping things up and back and forth with rocket attacks and airstrikes, and even the Hezbollah sent in a cruise missile deeper into Israel than they've ever done before, trying to hit the Mossad headquarters, which is the Israeli intelligence agency. So it looks like this could ramp up, that Israel's actually preparing for a ground invasion. So this could really expand to be quite an incredible war. There's the continued threats from Iran as they are trying to get nuclear capabilities, have a nuclear weapon, and it's their declared intent, if I remember right, to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, they just want Israel completely eliminated. So that's the Middle East. But shift your focus over towards Asia a little bit, and things are kind of tense over there. Did you realize, I don't know if you heard this, that China fired an intercontinental ballistic missile this week? Now, it was apparently a test because it just launched into the ocean. But it's a good reminder that there are lots of nuclear-capable countries around the world, not just the United States and Russia. China is one of them, and China is not on friendly terms with us. They had a joint naval drill with, let's see, what was it? I'm trying to remember which other country it was that it might have been Russia, that they were doing a joint naval drill. They're largest that they've done since the Cold War. So, there's those threats. So there's a lot of things going on around the world that could have a pretty dramatic effect on us, okay? So we've got the weather phenomenon here, the natural disasters here. You've got national crises and disasters, they're starting around the world and may spill over and affect us. Plus, we've got our own political mess that's going on right now with the election coming up and all the back and forth. And is this true? Is that true? Is this a lie? And all the rhetoric. Okay, so there's a lot of things that could really unsettle us if we were to allow them to. There's a lot of things that could cause us to fear. But as we've seen the past few weeks, as we've gone through this series in the scriptures, on worry, stress, fear, and anxiety, those are not the things that God wants to be characteristic of his people. He doesn't want us to abide there. There will always be problems that are coming, but he does not want us to be ones who are stressed, worried, anxious, fearful. So if you want to turn to Psalm 46, we're going to see a psalm today where we are instructed as to how it is that we can overcome this. And I think it's specifically very fitting with all the turmoil that's going on in the world around us. Okay, so Psalm 46, if you don't know what the book of Psalms is, it's basically the Hebrew hymnal. Okay, a bunch of different poetry. A lot of it we know that was set to music, even though the tunes have been lost over the ages. And now we're going to read Psalm 46, and we're just going to go straight through all 11 verses of it, and then we'll go back through and take a closer look at each portion of it. Okay? So Psalm 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth should change, and though the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and though the mountains quake at its swelling pride. Selah. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy dwelling places of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She will not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations made an uproar. The kingdoms tottered. He raised his voice. The earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Come, behold the works of the Lord, who has wrought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and he cuts the spear in two. He burns the chariots with fire. Cease striving and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Now, if you have your sermon notes with you, you can take those out. There's a few blanks to fill in there. And the first comes just from those opening lines of this psalm. I'm going to look at those again with us, okay? Because there's a truth in verse 1, and then there's the ramification of that truth in verse 2, okay? And this is basically the summary of this whole psalm, okay? God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. And then it says, as a result of who God is. Okay, there's three characteristics of God there. What is he? He's refuge, strength, and he is a present, accessible help to us. That's who he is. Therefore, I will not fear. I will not fear. So your first blanket there is, okay, I won't fear. And specifically, I won't fear the chaos. The chaos. We see the political chaos. We see the chaos in nature. We see all the stuff going on around the world. Plus, there's all the stuff going on in our personal lives, too, which can tend to be somewhat chaotic. I will not fear the chaos. Okay? And now we're going to break this down by paragraphs. And we're not going to fear the chaos of change, first of all. Okay? The chaos of change. That's in verses 1 through 3. Because it says there, we will not fear, and then in my translation, there's 4 uses of the word though. Okay? There's 4 different things that might happen, but I'm still not going to fear in spite of that. And it talks about the earth should change, the mountains slip into the heart of the sea. Now, the sea, for the Israelites, was representative of danger and fear and chaos. Now, if you know the geography of Israel, they're mostly a land-based people. They had some coastal territory. Of course, there's the Sea of Galilee, but they were not a seafaring people like the Phoenicians or the Philistines. And so they viewed the sea as something that's turmoil, it's dangerous, it's scary. It's often used metaphorically to represent evil because the sea can be so unpredictable, as we've seen this week with the hurricane and all that generated, the 20-foot storm surges down south. Okay, incredible destructive power, unpredictable and uncontrollable. So it is chaotic. And it says the mountains could slip into the heart of the sea. Well, for the mountains, that's something that's solid. That's dependable. That's reliable. The mountains don't move. That's something that's strong and dependable. And even if that which was strong and dependable, that which has always been reliable, should slip into the heart of the sea, okay? And then it talks about in verse 3, the waters roaring and foaming, the mountains quake at its swelling pride, okay, it being the sea. If chaos overwhelms the reliable and the dependable, I still will not fear. Why? Because God is my refuge and strength. My refuge and strength is not in the mountains. It's not in the caves. It's not in the fortresses on top of the mountains. It's not in these defensible positions. That's not what I rely on. I rely on God. Now, it's very possible that we have some mountains that we have come to depend on. As citizens of the United States, we have a constitution. We've had the rule of law. We've had the peaceful transfer of power for generations within our country. There's been lots of things that have been stable, but we're seeing that those things are starting to be a whole lot less stable now, right? I mean, January 6th, a few years back, okay, things got to be a big turmoil. People lament. I heard somebody commenting on the presidential debate that happened recently, and they're like, that wasn't a debate. That was people kind of arguing with each other. It was not people saying, well, here's my position, and here's my defense against that position, and nice, reasonable discourse. We don't have calm political discourse anymore, right? And if we look at our economy, the American dollar has always been very dependable. Well, is it going to continue to be dependable? We've got a $35 trillion national debt. At some point, this thing's going to implode. We've depended on all these things. They seem immovable and reliable like mountains, but they're not. At some point, all of these things are going to crumble. They're going to collapse. And then you bring it down to the small micro level. What about in your family? I've always had mom or dad or my brother's always been there for me. My husband, God takes that person, or that person, leaves or has a health crisis that they can no longer do what they used to do. That person who was a rock in your life is taken away. Is it going to shake you? Is it going to cause you to crumble? So the sea represents chaos. The mountains represent that which is reliable. Our mountains are different. It may not be a physical mountain, but we all have things on which we depend that are not ultimately, eternally dependable. So, if the changes around us leave us shaking, that should be an indicator to us that maybe we have banked ourselves on something that's not completely dependable. Maybe we've been relying on something other than God. All these things, it's natural to grieve and to struggle when a big change comes. But if afterwards, if you can't recover, if you can't stop trembling, if you can't stop shaking from this, is it possible that you've been relying on something other than the Lord? We're going to come through a time of grief, but we won't stay in a time of grief. We will come through a time of fear, but we're not going to stay in a time of fear. Our response to chaos reveals where our reliance is. Our response reveals our reliance. What are we relying on? Well, the way I respond is going to show where I've been relying. And if we see that we've been relying on something other than God, we got to make God our refuge and strength. He is our present help in time of trouble. Okay? Now, God brings order out of chaos. That's what he does. And to see that, let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. I'm just going to read you the first few verses of Genesis chapter 1. Now, keeping in mind what we learned about water, okay, and the Hebrew concept of what water is, okay? Genesis 1, verses 1 through 3. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Okay? Waters, think chaos. It's not formed. It's not solid. And then God said, let there be light. And there was light. God spoke into this, and he brought order out of the chaos. And then he continues to do that. He creates sky and land and plants and trees and stars and everything in all creation that we see. He took what was chaotic and he ordered it. He brings order and peace out of the chaos. So our next section here, okay, the next blank, he not only brings, we're not going to fear the chaos of change, but we're also not going to fear the chaos of a challenge, of challenging situations. And what we see in verses 4 through 7 is that, well, let me get back to the text here. Verses 4 through 7, there's a river whose streams make glad the city of God. This is not the chaotic sea. This is a peaceful river. And it says that the city of God, the holy dwelling places of the Most High, God is in the midst of her. She will not be moved. God is dwelling there, and that's what makes a difference and makes it a solid place. So how many of you guys have security measures on your home? Okay, something. Anybody have locks on your doors? Okay, that's a security measure, right? Now, some of you may have a guard dog. You may have an alarm system. You may have camera. I've seen your dog, Connie. That is not a guard dog. Okay, I saw you looking over at Danny. Is that a guard dog? Yeah. Some of us have security features around, in our home. But the greatest security feature is when the homeowner is home. That's really the greatest security feature because you're attentive, you're listening, you may be armed, you're certainly going to try to defend your home, your family, if somebody tries to break in and steal or hurt someone. The greatest defense is when the homeowner is present. Well, what does it say about this? God is in the midst of this city, so she's not going to be moved. God is immovable. He is the ultimate defender. He is our refuge and strength, the very present help in trouble. So if he is there defending, you know what? There's no reason to get shaken. There's no reason to get flustered about it. And the best defense is when he's there. So if God is there, Old Testament is talking about Jerusalem, the city on the hill, the capital city of Israel. Where does God dwell now? Where does God dwell now? Right here. He is in the midst of you. He is in the midst of y'all, of us. Okay, he's in the midst of you as an individual. He dwells inside your heart, but he's also in the midst of his people. And so since he is here, we don't have to worry. He's our refuge, he's our strength, and he defends his home. He defends his home. He cares about you. And when you're hurting, when you're threatened, when you're fearful, he takes it personally. He is going to defend you. He has not left you without a protector. God protects his dwelling place. Now, that does not always mean that trouble is not going to come. As a matter of fact, there might be trouble that we struggle with for a little bit. Because what does it say in verse 5? God will help her at the break of dawn. He'll help her when morning comes. Well, what does that mean? That means that there might be a season of night when there is danger, when there is struggle, but he has not abandoned you. He is there and he is going to intervene. Okay, Teresa, your testimony fit great with this. Okay, 30 years that she was dealing with, the 30 plus years, dealing with this cyst on her wrist. He allowed her to struggle for a period of time, but there came a time when he said, no more. There's a time that you're struggling through. It could be personally, grief, financial, health-related, whatever it is that you're journeying through. It's a hard thing right now, but he will intervene. He will show up. He will flex his might at some point on your behalf. Now, this next part is the part that spoke to me the most this week. Okay, verse 6. I'd like you to have your Bibles open because it helps to be able to see some things here that you're not going to see, because I can only put one verse or a half a verse or something like that up on the screens at a time. And I want you to be able to see multiple verses, okay? So it says, the nations made an uproar, the kingdoms tottered, he raised his voice, the earth melted. Now, when it says the kingdoms tottered, okay, in some of your translations it talks about fall, that is the exact same word that we saw in verse 5 about Jerusalem, she will not be moved. Same word in the Hebrew, okay, which is also the same word up in verse 2, though the mountains slip into the heart of the sea. So, even if the natural disasters are causing the things that are solid to slip, even if the uproar of the nations causes things to slip, to be moved, she will not be moved. His dwelling place will not be moved. Why? Because God's there. God's there. Now, the thing with verse 6 that stood out to me so much, though, you look at, there's three elements in each line, okay? You've got the person doing the acting, a person or people doing the acting. You've got what they're doing, and then you've got the result of it, okay? So the first line says, the nations made an uproar, okay? So nations, this is the Gentile peoples around, the godless peoples, okay? The nations, what were they doing? It's an uproar. I'm thinking of like a mob. They're yelling, they're screaming, they made an uproar, and what did it cause? The kingdoms of the world to kind of totter, to shake, to maybe even fall, depending on how you translate that, okay? Lots of people being super loud, and it caused a few things to fall over, right? What's the second line say? It says, he, God, raised his voice. And what happened? The whole earth melted. What made the difference here? It's not the volume. Okay, it doesn't say that God yelled. God just spoke up. Okay, let there be light. Let there be land. Let the earth be wiped out. The nations clamor, raise their voice, tons of energy, tons of people, tons of energy, tons of volume, and it kind of like bounces off the kingdoms of the world. They totter a little bit. God says, let it be so. Everything. It just melts. It's not who... It's not how loud, but who is doing the speaking that makes the difference. Because God's the one with the ultimate authority. It just takes a word. All he has to do is say a word, and it all happens. Now, verse 7 here, you see this refrain. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. And then it has the word Selah. Let's just get Selah out of the way. We don't know what it means, okay? It comes up in here 3 times. It probably means like pause, or go back to the chorus or something like that. It's some sort of like a musical or poetic notation for kind of the performance of this, okay? So we don't know what it means. We can just ignore it, okay? But the other part, the Lord of hosts, well, what does that mean? It does not mean he's holding a party, okay? Hosts means the armies of heaven, the host of heaven. So he is the commander of the armies of heaven. He's with us. He's with us, and the God of Jacob is our stronghold. So we do not need to worry. Now, we've talked about change and challenge, and now we're going to talk about conflict. Okay, conflict, and that comes up in verses 8 through 11. It says, there's not too many commands in this passage. A lot of it's descriptive, but here it's one. Behold. What does that mean? Pay attention. Look around. I need you to see something. Behold the works of the Lord and the desolations he has wrought on the earth. He is able to wipe out any army. And then it goes through and kind of takes some elements of the army, like a bow and a spear and a chariot and stuff like that, and says he's able to destroy all that stuff. So you don't have to worry about the conflicts around us. You don't have to worry about the armies coming against us because God stands there. He is your defender. Now, this is not only true here of human armies, but it's also true of satanic armies, okay? Because God's after us, God is for us, Satan is after us. He wants to destroy us. Send these demonic temptations and afflictions, and, he can mess with your bodies as well, in your minds. Satan's powerful, but he's nowhere close to God. All God has to do is say the word. The enemy is wiped out. As a matter of fact, at the end of time, that's what's going to happen. It says that death and Hades and the dragon, that ancient serpent of old, who's called the devil and Satan, is going to be thrown alive into the lake of fire. He's going to be cast in. And you know what? Jesus doesn't even have to do it himself. He tells an angel to do it. Do it for him. Cast Satan in, and it's all wiped out. He just says the word. That's all that it takes. He puts an end to conflict. And now, verse 10, this is the one I tricked you with a couple weeks ago. Okay, it starts out, be still and know that I am God. But then it goes on to say a little bit more than that. Okay, I'll be exalted among the nations. How do those things connect with each other? Okay, well, I learned something this week. So in mine says cease striving. The NIV says be still. Okay, and I need to get a little cord here. Okay, so I'm just going to use this little bit of this cord here. Okay, cease striving literally can mean let go. Let go, relax. It's kind of like if you have tension on a rope and you give some slack, okay, or you release it. That's literally kind of what this word means. Just let it go. It's kind of an overused saying, let go and let God. Okay, but that's really what this says. Let go, cease striving, and know I'm God. You're not. You're not. It is not up to you. I've got this. That's what God's saying. Be still and know. Cease striving. Know that I am God. And you know what? When you let God do his job and you just do your job, he gets the glory for the results of it, right? He will be exalted among the nations. He'll be exalted in the earth. So when we quit stressing about the things that we can't change and we give it over to God, everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Remember the buckets, right? Okay. I'm not going to hold this in my bucket here. I'm not going to worry about this. I'm just going to give it over to God. He's going to take care of it. Then when he takes care of it, everybody sees he gets the glory. He gets the glory. Just like with Teresa, the thing on her wrist, it's like, okay, nobody did that. God did that. So he gets the glory for it. And then we go into that refrain again at the end. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. So there's plenty of things that we could be concerned about, okay? All the chaos that happens with the conflicts in the world, with natural disasters, with the problems that we see between people. But in all of this, God says, shh, settle down. I've got this. I'm here. I care. I'm strong enough. I got this. You can just relax. If you remember when the children of Israel came up to the Red Sea, and they were getting ready they weren't getting ready to cross. They didn't know they could cross it. They're like, okay, Pharaoh's army's coming up after them. And there's a phrase in there, stand by and see the salvation of the Lord. Moses just had to raise his staff. That's all he had to do. God said, raise the staff. God did everything else, and he was exalted. But that came at the end of weeks and weeks of all these plagues. And things got worse for the Israelites before they got better. So realize, God's got this. And even if things seem like they're even getting worse for you as you're waiting on the Lord, he's going to take care of it. He's going to remedy it. He is going to deliver. He is present, and he cares. I'm going to invite our worship team to come and prepare to lead us in our closing song. So I want you to be thinking about what are the things that are most shaking you up, or at least most likely to shake you up. What are the things that you have struggled with to relax? To just trust God with it. And so what I'd like you to do is, as we're having this closing song and we're singing, I want you to be thinking, God, here's the thing that I need to give over to you. I need to stop trying so hard, stop stressing about it. I'm just going to hand this to you. I'm going to be still and trust, and God's going to take care of it. God's going to do it. I want to read you one final passage here. This is from the book of Mark. And in Mark chapter 4, the disciples are in the boat with Jesus, and there's a storm. And remember, Jesus was asleep on the cushion in the boat, and the storm didn't wake him up, didn't disturb him, but the disciples are like, we're going to die, don't you care? Okay? And it says that Jesus got up, this is Mark 4:39, rebuked the wind and said to the sea, hush, be still. Cease striving, okay? Hush, be still. The wind died down and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? And then what was the result of this? Their faith was boosted. They understood who God was better, who Jesus was better. Verse 41, they became very much afraid. They were afraid of the storm before. Now they're very much afraid because they realize who Jesus is, and said to one another, who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? The one who brings order and peace out of chaos. So if you feel, okay, God, I've got this disorder, this chaos, I'm struggling to fear here. I'm struggling with fear. Give it over to him. Who is this? It's Jesus. It's God in the flesh. He is the one who is able to settle it all out. And if you want someone to pray with you about that too, feel free to slip up front. I'd be glad to pray with you.